Welcome to NIOS live classes. Subject Environmental Science, Class 12th, Book number 333, Module number 2, Ecological Concepts and Issues. Lesson 5, Ecosystem. Part 2. In our previous part, students have learned about the meaning and the concept of an ecosystem. And also the biotic and abiotic components of an ecosystem. And along with that, the different types of ecosystems. The structure and functions of an ecosystem, such as energy flow and nutrient cycling, etc. And also we have know the importance of maintaining ecological balance. After study this part, learner will able to learn and recognize the two major components of ecosystem and can also describe ecosystem components by giving example of a pond. And also can list a few natural and human modified ecosystems and can explain energy flow through food chain. Now we are going to start our topic 5.2, Pond as an example of an ecosystem. A pond is an example of a complete, closed, and an independent ecosystem. It is convenient to study its basic structure and function. It works on solar energy and maintains its biotic community in equilibrium. If you collect a glass of pond water or a scoop of pond water or pond bottom mud, it consists of a mixture of plants, minerals, inorganic and organic materials. There is a picture on the screen showing the pond ecosystem. In pond ecosystem, there are various layers. First is the sun is the main source of energy for the pond system. And second, the producers. Producers also called phytoplankton and aquatic plants because they prepare their own food through photosynthesis. And third is primary consumers, which includes zooplankton and snails because they feed on plants. And after primary, secondary consumers, which include small fishes, it feed on primary consumers. And next comes tertiary consumers. It includes large fish because it feeds on smaller fishes. And after that, decomposers. It includes bacteria and fungi. Break down dead plants and animals, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem. There is a food chain in water. There is a visual explanation of food chain. It starts from the sun, which gives energy for all living things. Then tiny plants in water make their own food using sunlight. Then small animals that eat phytoplankton, and then small fishes that eat zooplankton, and then large fish that eat small fishes, and at last fungi. First component is abiotic. First is light. Light is one of the most important abiotic components, or we can say non-living component of a pond ecosystem. It comes from the sun and provides the energy needed for the ecosystem to function. And green plants use sunlight to prepare food through photosynthesis. The amount of sunlight that enters the pond depends on two varieties. First is the clarity of the water, or we can say transparency, and the second is the amount of dissolved or suspended particles in the water. the number of plankton, or we can say tiny floating organisms. Plankton are tiny organisms that float in the water. And if there are too many plankton, they block sunlight. And as a result, less sunlight reaches the deeper part of the pond. Based on how far sunlight reaches, a pond is divided into 3 zones. As you can see on the screen, it shows the 3 levels of the pond. First is shallow area near the shore, second open water where sunlight reaches, and the third deep water where little or no sunlight reach. So the first level of the pond is euphotic zone, or we can say well-lit zone. It receives plenty of sunlight and their plants and animals grow well, and the photosynthesis process takes place in this zone. Second level is mesophotic zone, or we can say dim light zone. It receives a limited amount of sunlight and fewer plants and animals are found in this level. And the third level is aphotic zone, or we can say dark zone. No sunlight reaches this zone and the photosynthesis cannot occur in this level. Very few organisms can survive here. And the second is inorganic substances. Inorganic substances include water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, sulfur. Oxygen and carbon dioxide are dissolved in water. Plants and animals need water and these substances to live, grow, and exchange gases. Some minerals are stored in the pond's bottom soil, while a small amount is dissolved in the water. Let's take a short break. Welcome back to our classes. Third is organic compounds. Organic compounds include amino acids, humic acids, and the remains of dead plants and animals. And these substances are found partly dissolved in water and partly floating in it. They provide nutrients that help living organisms grow. As you can see on the screen, when plants and animals dies, decomposers break them down into two substances like amino and humic. And the second component is biotic component. Biotic components are the living organisms in a pond ecosystem. And they are of three types. And first is producers or autotrophs. They synthesize food for all the heterotrophs of the pond. They can be categorized into two groups. First is floating microorganisms and plants. And second is rooted plants. Floating microorganisms and plants is called phytoplankton. They are tiny green plants that float on the surface of the water. They are called phytoplankton. Phytoplankton is made up of two different words. Phyto means plants and plankton means floating. Sometimes they become so numerous that the pond water looks green. For example, Spirogyra, Althrox, Cladophora, diatoms, volvox, etc. And the second was rooted plants. These are arranged in concentric zones from periphery to the deeper layers. Three distinct zones of aquatic plant can be seen with increasing depth of water in the following order. And it includes three types. First one is zone of emergent vegetation. It means plants grow in shallow water with their stems and leaves above the water surface. For example, Typha, bulrushes, Sagittaria, etc. And the second is zone of rooted vegetation with floating leaves. Its roots are fixed in the mud, but leaves float on the water. For example, Nymphia, or we can say water lily. The third one is zone of submergent vegetation. These plants remain completely underwater. For example, Hydrilla, Rupia, musk grasses, etc. Second is consumers, or we can say heterotrophs. Consumers cannot make their own food. So that's why they depend directly or indirectly on producers for the food. For example, tadpoles, snails, fishes, frogs, etc. Consumers are divided into three groups: zooplankton, nectons, benthic animals. First is zooplankton. They are tiny animals that float in water. For example, cyclops and cypress. Nectons, animals that can swim freely in water. For example, fishes. And the third one is benthic animals. These are the animals that live at the bottom of the pond. For example, beetles, mites, mollusks, and some crustaceans, etc. And the third part is decomposers. Decomposers are mainly bacteria and fungi. They are found throughout the pond but are most abundant at the bottom sediment. They break down dead plants and animals into simpler substances and recycle nutrients, helping to keep the pond ecosystem clean and healthy. For example, Rhizophus, Penicillium, Curvularia, Claridoporium, etc. Let's take a short break. Welcome back to our classes. We have completed our part. Now let's go through what we have learned in this part. At first, we have learned the pond ecosystem. A pond is a complete and independent ecosystem that depends mainly on solar energy, and it contains biotic and abiotic components. And second, we have seen the food chain in pond. In this, first comes the sun, and then producers, then primary consumers, then secondary consumers, then tertiary consumers, and at last decomposers. Producers are phytoplankton and aquatic plants. In primary consumers are zooplanktons or snails, etc. Then secondary consumers are small fish, and tertiary consumers are large fish, and then decomposers are fungi. And the third, we have learned the abiotic components. These are the components who are not living, like light, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, sulfur, etc. And after that, we have seen the organic compounds like amino acids and humic acids. And after that, the bacteria and fungi breaks down dead organisms and recycle nutrients. And after that, we had seen the pond zones based on sunlight. It is divided into three. First is euphotic zone, which receives plenty of sunlight. Photosynthesis occurs. And second is mesophotic zone, which receives limited sunlight and fewer organisms live here. And at last, third is aphotic zone, which has no sunlight reaches and photosynthesis cannot occur. And after that, we have seen the biotic components, which are living organisms. And it is divided into two parts. First is producers, which includes phytoplankton and rooted plants like emergenta plants, floating leaf plants, and submerged plants. And second, the consumers, which includes zooplankton, for example, cyclops, cypress, And second is nectons, which include fishes. And third is benthic animals, which include beetles, mites, mollusks, etc. And the third, we have learned about the decomposers, which include bacteria and fungi. They break down dead organisms and recycle nutrients. We have completed our part. Thank you for paying attention.